Hi everybody, here's Christian and I'm from Cast, and this is our Pico-8 hero, our little tutorial where we hopefully gonna learn a little bit about how to program things in Pico-8. And well, yes, I have to apologize, I haven't been publishing a new part of the tutorial for ages out now. Man, life got in the way, it was really frustrating, but also I also thinking about, because I'm getting a lot of positive feedback, thank you for joining me. So I actually thinking about maybe creating like a separate channel for these kinds of tutorials, so I can actually do a lot more of those tutorials in the future. Something that I want to do for the next tutorial is actually pre-record the entire tutorial all the way through, so we don't have these nasty gaps. So if you start with episode 1, you know, you'll be able to follow it on a regular release schedule. I have to really again apologize for these huge gaps. But here we are back again, and today I wanted to we're not going to actually program too much new stuff. I'm going to fix one bug, and then we're going to talk about why this bug happened and what the principle behind this bug is. Because I think I talked about this a little bit previously, but I feel like I have not explained it properly. It kind of caught me by surprise myself. Even though it's a bug that's actually quite frequent, or a problem that's quite frequent when you're working with arrays. And so this problem comes up if you delete stuff from arrays. So I'm gonna load our program. So the next big step, not today, but in the next episode, the next big step is gonna be the multi-ball thing. But the problem with the multi-ball is we're gonna have balls in an array. We're going to have them appear and disappear, and it's going to be a very big and very elaborate for next loop. And you know, we're gonna have for next loop where we iterate through all of the balls, and those balls can throughout the for next loop disappear from the array, and that can cause problems. And it caused problems in the past before. If you remember, we had some problems with the pills because the pills could also disappear. Here is exactly the part that we're looking for. We're removing the pills, check collision for the pills, and then we go through with an array through all of the pills. And you remember I did something weird here where I did like, oh, I have to go through the array backwards, and it's like, why exactly? And then I had these things. So these things are actually the actual bug that we're going to fix today. These actually have to go. This is not good. Let's remove those. And that's it. That's going to be all the coding that we're going to do today, at least at our program. So now I'm going to explain to you what the problem is, why we're going backwards through this array, and generally what is happening here. Okay? So I'm gonna just reboot, and I'm gonna write like a test program. You don't have to write this. I mean, you can, maybe you should, just do like a help. But it's going to be just an example to show you what the problem is. So we're going to start with, we're going to call something called array or LST. Let's call array. Let's ARR. So there's going to be an array with some values inside. We're going to put some strings inside. So man, I always forget what button to press. This keyboard, I haven't been using this keyboard for a while because this is my exclusive Pico-8 hero programming keyboard, and so I sometimes get things wrong, and I'm still not really sure how to make these things, but okay. So we're gonna put like an A in our array, and then we're gonna put a B and a C and a D. All right? Simple stuff. Okay, so far so good. You can imagine that these could be, instead of just A, B, C, and D, these could be like the different balls in our multi-ball array, right? We have like multiple balls. And man, like talking about, there's no way for this not to sound dirty, right? So, and then we're gonna do what you would do in a regular way, where it's like you're just gonna, when you regularly deal with arrays, you're just gonna go from the first entry, so number 1, to the last entry, which is in our case going to be #R. Right? So we're going to go from 1 to, in our case, 4. That's going to be D. D is number 4. A is number 1. B is number 2. C is number 3. D is number 4. We're going to go through all of them. Is it loop end? It's end. Oh man, I haven't been working with Pico-8 for a while. You have to apologize me, I'm a bit rusty. Okay, so now we're just gonna print the ignore the dramatic alert. That thing goes off whenever I'm programming bull crap. Okay, so so then I'm gonna print whatever is at this index, at this entry in our array. So I'm just gonna print ABCD on my screen, right? So like this. We already had this. Remember we did this thing where we had like Frodo and so forth. It's basically the same thing. I'm just using ABCD because it's a little bit easier to write. Okay, so let's run this. And you can see, oh no, everything is A right now, of course, because instead of the 1, we have to do an I here, because we're gonna take the number from our loop, the number of how many times we went through the loop, starting with 1, ending with 4. And I'm gonna plug this into our array and get that entry from the array and print it out. There you go, ABCD, right? So far, so good. Okay, so I'm gonna actually do it twice. I'm gonna do it because what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna now remove something from the array. We're gonna remove C. We don't want to have C there anymore. C is a traitor. We don't want to have it. So I'm gonna put like a, and at the end, after we remove this, removed C, we're gonna print out the entire array just to be sure that we know what just happened. So I'm gonna just copy this part, this loop, and I'm gonna put it in here. So now we're gonna loop through our array, and we're gonna wait until we find a C, and then we're gonna remove the C. Okay? So far, no problem. We're gonna keep this thing in here, because if there's not a C, just in case, if there's not a C, if the current item we're dealing with is not a C, maybe it's a B, maybe it's an A. In this case, we're still gonna print it. So just so we know what our delete loop is doing, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go if, and then RI. Remember, equals. And if that's a C, oh God, I'm just gonna copy it over because just pressing on this horrible keyboard is just too stressful for me. Okay, if that's a C, then something happens. I'm gonna put like a, what is minus? Yeah. Delete this crab. It's a crab, you know, like a tiny little crab. Otherwise, if it's not a C, then we're gonna actually print out whatever it was. Right? I'm gonna actually, instead of deleting it, I'm gonna actually also print it out. I'm gonna say like, oops. Oh no. I don't want to press this button. It causes me distress. It's a really bad button on this keyboard. Delete. Gosh, no. Catastrophe. I'm back with my first tutorial since ages and it goes wrong. So deleting. I'm just going to write deleting here. So we know that if it finds a C, it will print a deleting instead of the C. Okay. So I'm going to run this. And so you can see now we have A, B, deleting because he found a C there, and D. And then we have the line that I created here, and then we print out the array after we went through it and started deleting things. And you can see we still have a C there because we haven't actually deleted anything just yet. We just prepared the if statement. So and you know we are printing out information, letting us know what is actually currently happening while we're going through an array. Don't worry. I'm just writing the code first, and we're going to make something weird happen, and then I'm going to explain you why this weird thing happened. Okay? No, don't you worry, because now comes the part where we're actually going to delete the crab. So I have some notes here. So because I always forget the syntax for this. So it's delete. So del. And then R, that's our array from which we want to delete stuff, and then we're going to delete the C. Usually, this is a bit weird, but usually when you go delete this C entry from an array, it usually goes through the entire array and finds the first C and deletes that. But later on, for example, when we're doing our balls, we wouldn't put like a C in there. We would, for example, put like a direct reference to an object that is actually in our array. Whatever. We look for a C. If we find a C, we're going to delete this C. That's something that often happens. You iterate through an array, for example, a ball, and you realize, okay, this ball actually left the screen at the bottom, for example. And then you say, okay, whoa, we found a ball that's actually left the screen. Let's delete this ball. That's kind of like the same thing, only kind of like in a way that fits on the screen. It's kind of like a model for this, so to speak. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and something weird will happen. Let's analyze what happened here, because this is distressing, and this is the problem that we're trying to address. So you can see we start with, maybe I should CLS. Let's go CLS at the beginning. So we see what's happening. Okay, there we go. So we have AB, so far so good, deleting, so we deleted C apparently. And then D disappeared, because instead of D we have nil. What is nil? This is the moment where you just flip the table and be like, what is happening? But then to give us an idea what maybe happened, afterwards we print the entire array and we see, oh, okay, so we see that C has disappeared, D is still there, but somehow in our first loop, where we went through an entire array and started deleting things, somewhere in first loop, we deleted C, but we also skipped the next one, D, we skipped it. What happened? What exactly happened? This might be confusing. Okay? So let me see. I'm gonna do like a simulation. I'm gonna step you through step by step here in a text editor, so you understand what is happening. Actually, I'm gonna run this so you can see the results, so we can cross-reference. Okay, so actually no. Wait a minute. I want to show you this code, because we're gonna kind of like go through a code and think about what the computer is actually thinking when he or they or she, it executes our code. So when you see here up here, can we do this? So when we are starting a loop. And the way this loop works, especially in Pico-8, is the computer says Ima gonna loop starting with 1, because we have I equals 1, right? We have I equals 1. This is the starting point of our loop. This is where we start with I. Until, and then it's hashtag R, right? Hashtag R. But at this moment when this is executed, hashtag R equals 4, right? So we can just as well put in until 4, right? Until I equals 4. And adding 1. We left the screen, whatever. So basically we're adding 1 on every loop. I'm gonna put it on +1, because later on the way to fix this is go to backwards. So we're adding 1 every time. You're starting at 1, then we get 2, 3, 4. I know it seems obvious, but I'm just trying to explain what's happening in this very verbose way, because you know the problem appears here in a second, and we want to be prepared for this. And I don't want to skip any steps, because that's where you get confused, or that's when I get confused myself. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to put like a little minus here, showing us where we are in the loop. We're now going through the loop. We're now going through this stuff, right? And I'm going to try to manually recreate what's happening. Okay, we have A. Okay, we're going to print A on the screen, no problem, right? We're going to print A, we are at number 1, like index number 1, index number 1 is A over there, it's A here, no problem. Then loop is over, we're going to advance I, we're going to advance the index by 1, because we always add +1, right? So we're going to skip to 2, and we're going to look at what is at number 2. Number 2 is B, same procedure, we're just going to print B. It's not a C, so we don't have to delete anything, whatever. We're going to add 1 at the end. You're going to skip the next one. Now, at C, at number 3, at entry number 3, suddenly things happen, man. Suddenly we realize, okay, wait, this is a C. So you can see we're printing deleting on the screen, and we remove C. Okay, we printed deleting on the screen, and now we're going to remove C. Okay, so I'm going to take this entire entry. Oh, by the way, I made the mistake here. This is going to be 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I'm going to delete C. Okay, I deleted C. But now D, because we can't have gaps in our array, so D becomes 3. Uh-oh. See the problem? Because now we are looking at D. And now the loop is over. So now we're going to add +1. We're not done yet. We're at 4. We're going to go until 4. So we're still at 4 now. So this is our final loop now. So we go 4, I guess, which no longer exists because our array is now 3 entries long. And we're trying to retrieve number 4 from our array. But it used to be D, but it's no longer D because D is now where C used to be. So we're actually trying to access an array, an entry of the array that doesn't exist anymore. And that's how we get nil. That's how we get nil means we tried to access some value and it just didn't exist. And the computer freaked out for a very good reason. Okay, so that's why we get nil here, so basically, and that's how you get what you saw before. And then when you go through this array once more, then everything seems to be fine. And then we have A, B, no C, and then D, right? So what is the solution? How do we fix this problem? How can we go through this array and delete things while we're going through an array without, having to stop and redo the loop every time we change something about our array or something like this? And there's like different solutions to this, obviously. So I'm gonna rewrite this so this problem doesn't appear anymore. Let me look. So we're gonna, as you saw my solution for this is to go backwards to the array. And that's a very simple, nice solution because we don't have to change anything about the code actually. It's just this the way we set up our loop changes. But everything else about our code can stay the same. And then suddenly, magically, this problem doesn't appear anymore. That's amazing. Why though? Okay, let me just rewrite this code first to see if this actually works. And then we're gonna try to understand why this is no longer happening. Okay, so we start at R. We want to go all the way down to 1. This is going to be our last loop. 1 is going to be our last loop. And then we're going to do -1 this time around on each loop. If you're going just upwards 1 by 1, you don't have to write the -1 or +1 at the end. But if you're going to want to go through this loop in a kind of like weird way, then you always have to add, what kind of increment do you want to have after each loop. In our case, we're going to increment by -1, so decrease by 1. No, whatever. This is the way you go backwards through an array. Okay, so I'm going to run this. You see, we start with D, then we delete the C, then we have B and A, exactly what we wanted. And then afterwards, the result is the same that we had previously, but we no longer have this nil problem that we had. No longer the nil problem. We just go through an array like regularly and just delete the C. So what happened? Okay, I'm gonna go step this one more time, but this time around we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it backwards. So we're gonna start. I'm gonna start looping with 4 until 1. 1 is gonna be our last one, and -1. So we're gonna go backwards, right? So we're starting with D, and again we're starting with 4, the entry number 4, with our last entry. And we're checking what it is. It's not a C, it's a D. We're printing the D. Everything is fine. Then we decrease, we go backwards, we decrease down from 4 to 3. Our index turns from 4 to 3. We're looking at a C. We know, okay, C is an issue. We have to delete a C. And we know this is now where we get nervous because we know when we're going from 1 to 4, we're going forward through an array. This is where problems happen, right? So we're deleting the C and hope that everything will, this time will work well. So we deleted the C, the D turned into the number 3. So we're looking at D still. Uh-oh, this is not good. This is actually what we wanted to avoid. But look, now the loop is over and we go -1. And we beautifully go one less than D. We already dealt with the D, and we go now to the B. So we no longer have this nil problem that we have, because we are basically everything we're deleting something, it kind of like it moves around. The index is moving around, but only in the area that we already actually dealt with, because we're going backwards through this thing. So things kind of like fall into place as we go backwards through an array, instead of things being like kind of disturbed and perturbed in front of us as we're going through an array. It's basically like this scene in movies where, you know, a cool guy doesn't look at the explosion and everything explodes behind them. It's basically what we're doing here. We're going backwards through an array and the entire array explodes behind us. But it's no problem, because we already dealt with all this stuff behind us. We no longer care. We look in a different direction. We're no longer looking at explosion. It's kind of like, it feels to me like this a little bit sometimes. Okay, yeah, so now B is fine. It's not a C. We're going to print a D, and we're going down to A. A is also not a C, and we can finish this loop. So that's why looping backwards through an array solves so many issues. And even though it seems like, even though the code is the same. So every time you're looking through an array and deleting stuff inside the array, and you get some nil problems or some kind of like even worse stuff, because, you know, down the line, even worse stuff can happen if there's like an object associated with this. Oh, horrible problems. Every time you have these kinds of problems, the solution often is to go backwards through an array. Like a very verbose way to explain this. I wanted to add to really like break this down into individual steps, because I think this is so important when you're working with arrays, and something that comes up so often when you're having like missiles or particles, or like a lot of objects happening on the screen, and they have to constantly, you know, checked for if they left the screen, or if they have been, you know, enemies maybe have been hit by a projectile, the enemies have to explode or disappear. You know, you constantly have this situation where you have a huge area of objects, and you're looping through an array and checking if they disappear, and removing the object as you go. And these problems come up over and over and over again, and the solution often is just going backwards through an array. That's my shtick for today. So the next time around, we're gonna take this knowledge and we apply it to our multi-ball situation, where we're gonna create a huge for next loop. And this huge for next loop, we're gonna deal with all the balls, and the balls will disappear, but it will be no problem, because we're gonna apply this idea. See you next time around, guys. Bye bye.